This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Here we go. Hey, everybody. Ben Handelman from the FOX6 Studios, and welcome to another exciting hour of the Wisconsin Live Desk. Here in FOX6, everyone's been calling this wild, Wisconsin Live Desk. But it's also a good description of what we're about to experience here on the Live Desk. Hey, if this is your first experience, here's the rules of the Wisconsin Live Desk. Everything you are about to witness and watch is live. We don't edit or cut anything. And from this room, I have the ability to take feeds from all around Wisconsin, all around the Midwest, and really all around the world. It all depends on what's happening and what's being fed. And I've got the controls. I use these fingers, and I'll punch up, and we'll see a bunch of stuff that's happening. All right, let's just take you a little tour of what we're following here at this hour. The Bucks, live picture here, about to have a press conference downtown about their upcoming first-round playoff series against the Indiana Pacers. The Bucks are about to leave town. They open on the road on Saturday, and so they will be holding a press conference. We'll hear from some members of the team, maybe some players, and we've got a live picture. I think Gabby Nasby, our photojournalist, is at this shot. We're watching what's happening in California. Live picture coming. We're expecting to hear from the governor and the attorney general in California. They want to fight the tariffs, and we're expected to hear about a new lawsuit that is taking place. We're also watching what's happening in Texas right now. This is a live picture from the Texas State House. They're talking school vouchers down in Texas and school choice, kind of a controversial program down there that would give families the option up to $10,000 to spend on any school they want to go to. Now, we have school choice here in Wisconsin. We were one of the first states to really start this program, but a little bit different what they're proposing down in Texas. It would be more open, but the costs would be much higher. And the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, he's really been campaigning on this, actually campaigned against certain lawmakers who in the past were against the school voucher program and got some more supporters into the State House there. So we'll see what happens with this controversial. We're going to listen in here in a few seconds. But I also want to take you here to Chicago. Economic Club of Chicago. We're expecting to hear from Jerome Powell. That is the Fed chair. Obviously, Wall Street's been pretty wild with what's happening with the tariffs and the uncertainty. And there may be news that could impact your 401k depending what comes out of this press conference. So why don't we listen in?
Corporate Finance,
Chicago, Illinois, Economic Club of Chicago.
Award-winning books, was himself as a scholar winner of the Fisher Black Prize, which goes to the greatest financial researcher under age 40. He's since over age 40, but he was the inaugural winner. He is a member of the Group of 30, and he was the 23rd governor of the Reserve Bank of India, and before that, chief economist and director of research at the International Monetary Fund. You probably know him as a regular contributor to the Financial Times. He speaks extensively on economic and financial issues. Please give a warm welcome to Professor Rajan. And then our featured speaker will be Jerome Powell, the 16th chair of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. As head of the U.S. Central Bank, as you know, Chair Powell plays a crucial role in the country's monetary policy, oversees major financial institutions, and maintains economic and financial stability in this country. He was first appointed as a board member of the Fed by President Obama in 2012. He was subsequently elevated to chair of the Fed by President Trump in 2018, and then renominated to his post by President Biden in 2021. He has the respect of members of both parties, and I believe that no one as Fed chair has ever had to deal with more and varied challenging issues than Chair Powell has had to deal with. From the pandemic to fighting inflation to bank runs and on, his leadership at the Fed has been a steady hand and one of the all-time greats. Before coming to the Fed, Chair Powell was a visiting scholar at the Bipartisan Policy Center in Washington, D.C. He first entered public service at the Treasury Department under President George H.W. Bush, with responsibility for financial institutions, the Treasury debt market, related areas. Outside of public service, Chair Powell has worked as a lawyer, an investment banker, and been a partner at the Carlyle Group. In addition to his service on corporate boards, he served on boards of charitable and educational institutions, including the Bendham Center for Finance at Princeton and the Nature Conservancy of Washington, D.C. and Maryland. He is a D.C. native, received a BA in politics from Princeton and a law degree from Georgetown University, where he was editor of the Georgetown Law Journal. Please welcome to the Economic Club of Chicago again, Chair Jerome Powell.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's great to be back in Chicago. And thanks for that kind introduction, Austin. So I'm looking forward to my conversation with Professor Rajan Raghu. But first I'll briefly discuss the outlook for the economy and monetary policy. So at the Fed, we are always focused on the dual mandate goals that Congress has given us: maximum employment and stable prices. Despite heightened uncertainty and downside risks, the U.S. economy is still in a solid position. The labor market is at or near maximum employment. Inflation has come down a great deal, but is still running a bit above our 2% objective. Turning briefly to the incoming data, we'll get the initial reading on first quarter GDP in a couple of weeks. The data we have in hand so far suggests that growth has slowed in the first quarter of this year from last year's solid pace. Despite strong motor vehicle sales, overall consumer spending appears to have grown modestly. In addition, strong imports during the first quarter, reflecting attempts by businesses to get ahead of potential tariffs, are expected to weigh on GDP growth. Surveys of households and businesses report a sharp decline in sentiment and elevated uncertainty about the outlook, largely reflecting trade policy concerns. Outside forecasts for the full year are coming down, and for the most part, point to continued slowing, but still positive growth. We are closely tracking incoming data as households and businesses continue to digest these developments. In the labor market, during the first 3 months of this year, non-farm payrolls grew by an average of 150,000 jobs per month. While job growth has slowed relative to last year, the combination of low layoffs and lower labor force growth has kept the unemployment rate in a low and stable range. Meanwhile, the ratio of job openings to unemployed job seekers has remained just above 1, near its pre-pandemic level. Wage growth has continued to moderate while still outpacing inflation. Overall, the labor market appears to be in solid condition and broadly in balance, and is not a significant source of inflationary pressure. As for our price stability mandate, inflation has significantly eased from its pandemic highs of mid-2022 without the kind of painful rise in unemployment that has frequently accompanied efforts to bring down high inflation. Progress on inflation continues at a gradual pace, and recent readings remain above our 2% objective. Estimates based on the most recent data from last week show that total headline PCE prices rose 2.3% over the 12 months ending in March, and that excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core prices rose 2.6%. Looking forward, the new administration is in the process of implementing substantial policy changes in 4 distinct areas: trade, immigration, fiscal policy, and regulation. These policies are still evolving, and their effects on the economy remain highly uncertain. As we learn more, we will continue to update our assessment. The level of tariff increases announced so far is significantly larger than anticipated, and the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth. Both survey and market-based measures of near-term inflation expectations have moved up significantly, with survey participants pointing to tariffs. Survey measures of longer-term inflation expectations, for the most part, appear to remain well anchored as well. Market-based break-evens continue to run close to 2%. So, as we gain a better understanding of the policy changes, we'll have a better sense of the implications for the economy and hence for monetary policy. Tariffs are highly likely to generate at least a temporary rise in inflation. The inflationary effects could also be more persistent. Avoiding that outcome will depend on the size of the effects, on how long it takes for them to pass through fully to prices, and ultimately on keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our obligation is to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored and to make certain that a one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem. As we act to meet that obligation, we will balance our maximum employment and price stability mandates, keeping in mind that without price stability, we cannot achieve the long periods of strong labor market conditions that benefit all Americans. We may find ourselves in the challenging scenario in which our dual mandate goals are in tension. If that were to occur, we would consider how far the economy is from each goal and the potentially different time horizons over which those respective gaps would be anticipated to close. As that great Chicagoan Ferris Bueller once noted, life moves pretty fast. For the time being, we are well positioned to wait for greater clarity before considering any adjustments to our policy stance. We continue to analyze the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. We understand that elevated levels of unemployment or inflation can be damaging and painful for communities, families, and businesses. We will continue to do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you, and I look forward to our discussion.
Jerome Powell there, that's the Fed chair. When he speaks, the markets tend to move. He kind of had a rosy picture of the economy right now, says that everything is still showing strong signs with the economy, but does say that inflation likely to rise with the tariffs. They're going to have a Q&A right here, and this is where things can really get interesting. Again, though, when Jerome Powell speaks, the markets tend to react to it. So let's hear what he has to say.
As you repeatedly emphasize, communication and transparency are very important for the Fed. I would like to get more from you on some of what you just said. As a former central banker, the only sort of caution I've been given by the Economic Club is to not lapse into central bank speak. So I'll try my best not to do that. Let me start by saying you've guided the Fed through some really difficult events, including the pandemic, the dash for cash in March 2020, the great inflation, the banking crisis centered around Silicon Valley Bank, and then over the course of the last year, we've seen a growing possibility of a Fed-engineered soft landing. And now, it seems like everything has changed. In the course of a couple of months, JP Morgan has shifted to estimating the probability of a recession this year at around 60%. What do you think about all this?
Well, first of all, thank you for being here today. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Actually, the appearance I did here was my very first appearance as chair 7.5 years ago, so it's great to be back. And I would agree with you that it's been an eventful 7 years, putting it mildly. I keep waiting for the 3 months of calm, that never comes. But to your question, I guess to set the stage, let's look back at 2024. 2024 was a year where the economy grew 2.4%. Unemployment remained in the low 4s, close to mainstream estimates of maximum employment, and inflation came down and was running at the end of the year around 2.5%. That's the economy that we had. And I won't decide how to characterize that, but that's where things were. Where we are now, again to your question, is the administration is, as I mentioned in my remarks, is implementing significant policy changes, and particularly trade now is the focus. And the effects of that are likely to move us away from our goals. So unemployment is likely to go up as the economy slows in all likelihood, and inflation is likely to go up as tariffs find their way, and some part of those tariffs come to be paid by the public. So that's the strong likelihood. And my hope is that we'll get through this and get back. Well, we're always going to be aiming for maximum employment and price stability. That's what we do. I do think we'll be moving away from those goals probably for the balance of this year, and then, or at least not making any progress, and then we'll resume that progress as we can.
Let's talk a little more about tariffs. I mean, you recognize that some of the effects of the tariffs will be one-off, transitory, but you also have said that perhaps they will give room for a number of firms to raise prices. You mentioned dryers. When washing machine prices went up because of tariffs, dryer prices also went up in tandem, even though they weren't tariffed. What's your sense about the effects of tariffs on inflation? What would make them more persistent? And what would make them have effects on growth?
So in a kind of a simple starting point is one tariff comes in that gets passed along in prices and raises inflation, but it's just a one-time thing. So the price level goes up, and that's it. But that can happen in some circumstances, but it depends on a number of things which we don't know yet. And I would point to a couple of them, or three of them actually. One is just the size of the effects. And as I mentioned, the tariffs are larger than forecasters had expected, certainly larger than we expected, even in our upside case. We looked at a range of cases. So that's one. The second one is how long does it take for the tariffs to have their effects on inflation? To the extent it takes longer and longer, that raises the risks that the public will begin to experience higher inflation. They'll come to expect it, and companies will come to expect it. So that risks higher inflation. And the third is just what I mentioned in my speech, which is my remarks, which is got to keep inflation expectations well anchored. So if we have those three things under control, that's what it will take. And indeed, our role is to make sure that this will be a one-time increase in prices and not something that turns into an ongoing inflation process. That's a big part of our job.
What about the effects of tariffs on quantities? With the level of tariffs that, for example, have been currently applied on China, there's a fear that the supply chain may get disrupted, that firms may not be able to import their relevant stuff from China given the level of prices. If it turns into a supply shock, would the Fed's response be different than if it was primarily something which affected just prices?
So I actually had dinner at the Chicago Fed last night, and with a number of directors of various parts of the Chicago Fed, and many of them are CEOs of significant companies, and they this uncertainty that they're feeling and the issue with imported components to their products is just a huge issue. But with if you look back at the pandemic, if you remember, there was a shortage of semiconductors, and that led to a shortage of cars at a time of extremely high car demand. And it was a prolonged shortage because production couldn't keep up. And that led to an extended period, one of the things that led to an extended period of inflation. So when you think about supply disruptions, that is the kind of thing that can take time to resolve, and that can lead what would have been a one-time inflation shock to be extended, perhaps more persistent, and we would worry about that. In this case, you can look at the car companies, which their supply chains are likely seem to be on track to be disrupted significantly, and you would worry that process will take some years and that the inflationary process might be extended. So these are all of this is highly uncertain. We're thinking now, really before the tariffs have their effects, as how they might affect the economy, and that's why we're waiting really to see what the policies ultimately are, and then we can make a better assessment of what the economic effects will be.
Okay, you're listening to the
Let's move
Wisconsin
to
Live Desk. That's
immigration.
Jerome
We
Powell, who's
talked
in the
about
Midwest
labor market.
today. He's talking with the Economic Club of Chicago. Unfortunately, our cameraman down at FLD in Chicago is on a shaky riser, so it kind of looks like there's an earthquake happening at times. That's just the riser that they're on. But when Jerome Powell speaks, the markets tend to move. Here's what the stock market's doing right now. On this Wednesday, not a good day. Actually, as the show has started, these numbers continue to go down. 1.5 points lost on the Dow today. A lot of uncertainty still with the tariffs, and the stock market does not like it. Although Jerome Powell, he just kind of gave a more rosy picture of the economy, saying it's still strong, does think the tariffs would raise inflation the longer they last, but the unemployment's low and the economy's still strong. But this is not a good day, once again, for the stock market as we're watching what's happening there. We've got our eyes also on this shot coming from Washington, D.C., the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. He is meeting with the man who has the similar position from El Salvador. El Salvador has been in the news lately because of that Maryland man who was mistakenly deported to an infamous prison in El Salvador, and the Trump administration and the president of El Salvador says that man will not be coming back despite court orders to make that happen. There is news today. There's a senator from Maryland who says he is going to travel to El Salvador to check in on that man who came into the country illegally but was then given the right to stay here from an immigration attorney, and by the Trump administration's own admission, they accidentally sent him to that infamous prison in El Salvador. Closer to home, Bo Geiger, our photojournalist, this is his shot. We're at the Anderson Lake Tower. That is a city-owned property. We're getting ready for an illegal dumping summit. And there, look, live on the screen, the mayor of Milwaukee has just walked into the room, live here on the live desk. So a summit is about to happen to try and figure out if there is anything the city can do to tackle this illegal dumping issue. And actually, just announced in the last 24 hours, the city council is creating a new body that would take on Milwaukee's illegal dumping epidemic. The Common Council is going to create this kind of task force. As they say, people are coming from outside of even Wisconsin to come to Milwaukee to dump their garbage in the city, and it has become a real issue. So everybody in this room wants to come up with a solution. Here's what we're going to do. A lot is happening right now on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll see what's happening. But Jerome Powell's still talking in Chicago. We got this press conference about to start in D.C., and we've got things going on here at home as the stock market's also having a bad day. So we'll keep our eyes on that.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Ben Handelman from the FOX6 Studios. It's another exciting hour here on the Wisconsin Live Desk on your Wednesday. If it's your first ever time joining us here on the Live Desk, oh, you're in for a treat because this is a show about unpredictable things happening. We have no idea where the next half hour, 40 minutes will take us here. As here's the only rules on the Wisconsin Live Desk. If it's happening live, we will take it. You will see news unfold before your eyes. You'll get the full context. We just heard from the Fed chair, Jerome Powell. You will see sound bites from what he is saying in Chicago all over the news today, but you can only really get the context of the full conversation when you watch it all, and that is the power of what we can do here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Here's some things we're watching at this hour. Set the start in a few minutes here. This is Milwaukee, Wisconsin. An illegal dumping summit is taking place. The mayor has just walked into the room. This has become a big problem here in the Milwaukee area where people are literally dumping their trash on like the north side of Milwaukee. We're talking piles of tire and other stuff. And some city leaders say some of the offenders they believe are coming even from out of the state to do this. And they're trying to find ways to make this stop, raising the fines, better enforcement. But they're going to create a task force and they're going to talk about it here today. We're watching the stock market at this hour. It has not been a good Wednesday, especially as the Wisconsin Live Desk we went live. We're now over 650 points in the red. The Dow down 1.6% as tariff uncertainty continues to affect the markets. I mean, just look at what's happened in the last week. It is even lower than it was a few days ago as we're down another 600 points. So was interesting that we just heard from Jerome Powell, who's talking in Chicago. Want to bring you live to what's happening in live picture now. This is California. This is the Attorney General of California, and he is speaking about tariffs, and they want to have a new lawsuit. Let's listen in.
Alongside our great governor to fight for California's vibrant economy, businesses, workers, and families. And before I pass it off to my partner on this lawsuit, Governor Newsom, I want to give a final shout out to the folks on my team who worked tirelessly on this lawsuit. They don't do it for the recognition, but I'm going to recognize them. Zelda Vassar, Carolyn Downs, Laura Haddad, Shawan Shea, Julie Veroff, Matthew Wise, Thomas Patterson, Christina Bull-Arndt, Ellie Bloom. We have a great team, and I'm proud of them. Incredible public servants, each and every one of them. With that, it's my great pleasure to introduce our great governor, Governor Gavin Newsom.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General, and most importantly, thank you, Christine, for having us and hosting us, and thank you, Chris, for your stewardship and leadership and willingness to be here and step up at this critical moment. Look, I think the Attorney General did an exceptional job in laying out the framework of this lawsuit and the why as it relates to the particular issues under the IEEPA, and notably issues that have been brought to the fore as it relates to the major questions doctrine recently by the Supreme Court. I would just highlight just two of the specific examples the Supreme Court used as it relates to the major questions doctrine on the issue of student loans under the Biden administration, on the Clean Power Plan under the Obama administration. If they are consistent, then this lawsuit is a lock in terms of what the Attorney General has laid out and what this state is asserting. But I want to tell you what our state of mind is as it relates to the issues that impact the state of California, obviously the state of our union, and the state of the economy more globally. We talk often about California being the fifth largest economy in the world. That is correct. We're also the largest manufacturing state in the United States of America, $412 billion output. And I want to put that in perspective. Texas is 41% smaller. It's a 41% larger share of manufacturing output just here in the great state of California. It puts in perspective something that often isn't communicated, I think, as effectively as it should be. By the way, the United States is the second largest manufacturer in the world, which is also something that I think is important to highlight. So the manufacturing footprint in this state is disproportionately impacted by the tariffs, disproportionate to any other state in the nation. Of course, we talk about the fifth largest economy in the world. Let's put that in perspective. We're 14% of the U.S. GDP. That is 50% higher than the next state. No other state will be more impacted by the impacts of this, as Christine said, uncertainty that is best described as toxic uncertainty because of these tariffs. Let me underscore that with more consideration and context to where we are. We are also the largest hunting, fishing, agriculture, and forestry state in this nation, 150% larger than the next state, Texas. When folks talk to us about the impacts, regional impacts of rural economies, you're talking about California. You're not just talking about the Midwest and places like Texas. You're talking about our state, the state of California. Almonds you see around us, export dependent. Pistachios, export dependent. Dairy, export dependent. In fact, 43% of almonds and pistachios and dairy are export dependent in the state of California. Few industries will be hammered more than the toxic uncertainty of these Trump tariffs. The impacts, what more evidence do you need? Check your 401k. Check your portfolio. If it includes NVIDIA, you should check it right now. NVIDIA, the great California company, one highlighted by this same Trump administration over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours, just got hit today with a $5.5
Okay, this is Gavin Newsom
charge.
talking a lawsuit about tariffs. I've got a new shot up. This is coming from a Maryland senator right here who made a trip to El Salvador to check on the guy who was mistakenly deported to an infamous prison. Let's listen in here.
And his answer was that the Trump administration is paying El Salvador, the government of El Salvador, to keep him at CCOT.
This is Chris Van Hollen, by the way, Democrat from Maryland.
And I pointed out that neither the government of El Salvador nor the Trump administration has presented evidence to support the claim that he's committed any kind of criminal acts. And so why not release Abrego Garcia today? And he said what President Bukele said the other day at the White House, which that El Salvador can't smuggle Mr. Abrego Garcia into the United States.
Okay, so that's Chris Van Hollen. He is a Democrat from Maryland, has made his way to El Salvador after this individual, according to the Trump administration, was mistakenly deported and is now in that infamous El Salvador prison. I want to get you, we've got a new picture up. The mayor of Milwaukee is talking about illegal dumping at this summit. Let's listen in.
Milwaukee, and you've been terrific partners for the city, helping to address issues in our neighborhoods. One of those issues that all of us knows, unfortunately, all too well, is the reason why we're here today, and that's to address issues around illegal dumping. Everyone in this room took time out of their busy schedules to share some of their ideas on improving those efforts. Just so that everybody is aware, and I know that the people in this room are, it's a crime. Illegal dumping is a crime. It's a crime of laziness, and it's a crime of greed. Whether it's a tire shop leaving dozens of tires on a business's parking lot, whether it's a contractor discarding construction materials in an alleyway, or a landlord tossing a former tenant's property out somewhere after an eviction, those who commit this selfish crime choose to forego what essentially is really mild inconvenience, and instead choose to harm our communities with the blight that they generate when they take those actions. Milwaukee, just so that folks are aware, is not alone in addressing the issue of illegal dumping. It plagues every city in the United States. But it's not just an urban crime, though. It also plagues communities in rural areas, too. As a matter of fact, the United States Environmental Protection Agency estimates that about 1.5 million tons of waste are illegally disposed of throughout the United States each and every single year. Locally, every aldermanic district in the city has had occurrences of illegal dumping. You probably saw some news coverage recently about some really atrocious illegal dumping that happened in Alderwoman Pratt's district with a number of tires, thousands and thousands, hundreds and thousands of tires that were dumped in the Alderwoman's district. And although every area of our city has been victimized by the crime, many neighborhoods are disproportionately affected by the dumping, like I just described in Alderwoman Pratt's district. The burden of the crime is heavy. From a financial perspective, it costs to clean illegal dumping at our city-owned properties and streets, drains hundreds and thousands of dollars each and every single year. It diverts those resources from city residents and causes us to have to divert them to cleaning up the mess in neighborhoods all across the city. It requires departments to spend time and personnel costs on addressing the issue as well. But the toll on our residents is far, far greater. Illegal dumpers often shift their responsibility of disposal onto private property owners, basically stealing from them, stealing their resources. Illegal dumping presents health risks. There are environmental risks as well. There are fire hazards. Illegal dumping causes psychological harm, often leading to feelings of people. We've seen this when we talk to folks, of despair when one's neighborhood is repeatedly victimized by this crime. So as mayor, I've asked our city departments to search for creative solutions to this problem, because I believe that no stone should be left unturned to address the issue. And I know that a number of the elected officials here and neighborhood partners feel the same way. We shouldn't leave any stone unturned in trying to affect change in this issue. And although I'm happy to see progress, we've got lots of work to do to combat this plague. Defeating illegal dumping will require interdepartmental collaboration in order to uncover new ideas. That's why I'm glad that there are so many city agencies that are here today, from the Department of Neighborhood Services, of course, to the council that I mentioned, the city attorney's office, to the police department and others, working collectively to address this issue. So I'll continue to encourage all affected city departments to work with the county as well as to work with state agencies to not only decrease illegal dumping incidents, but also to make sure that individuals who are caught dumping illegally, like the gentleman who was caught recently, face penalties for their actions, that they actually get fined and they actually have to pay the costs for causing disruptions in the lives of people all across our city. And working with you, our neighborhood service planners, that's another piece of this very important puzzle. So I hope the efforts from your workshop today contribute to practical as well as effective solutions to this problem. I'm now going to welcome back DNS Deputy Commissioner Mike Mazmanian to introduce the presenters for today. Again, thank you all so much for being here, for working to address this really, really important issue that, again, plagues neighborhoods all over our entire city. I hope you have a productive afternoon. Thanks so much.
Cavalier Johnson, Mayor of Milwaukee, at this illegal dumping summit that's underway. So we'll keep watching this. It has become a very busy hour here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We're still watching what's happening in El Salvador. This is a Democratic senator, Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, who has flown to El Salvador to try and meet with the man who was wrongfully deported and sent to this infamous prison. The Trump administration and the president of El Salvador says they're not going to bring him back despite a court order to do so. We're also watching what's happening in Washington, D.C. as the defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, is meeting with the man with the exact same title from El Salvador. So they are meeting and talking about national defense. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has sued the Trump administration today over tariffs. He's holding a press conference right now. All of this happening as we are watching all of it here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll see what's happening, and we'll take it live.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Ben Handelman from the Wisconsin Live Desk. Look at this. Pete Hegseth is now meeting with the man who's the defense secretary from El Salvador. This is happening live, coming from Washington, D.C. As you can see, the defense secretary has just arrived from El Salvador, and you could see military officials there standing at salute. So this all comes as something very interesting is happening in El Salvador, as the Trump administration, to their own admission, wrongfully sent a man. They deported him. He was an El Salvador man who came to our country illegally, but an immigration judge later said he could stay here, and the courts have ordered that he come back. But yesterday, President Trump and the president of El Salvador both said that's not going to happen. So more meetings are taking place between our country and El Salvador. So there's this infamous prison in that country that the Trump administration has sent, who they say are members of a violent gang from Venezuela. And El Salvador says, hey, bring them here. We've got this prison. As long as you pay us some money. It's a little money for the government of the United States, but it's a lot of money for us. Let's see. Do we have audio on this? Let's try and listen in here. Well, I did not know the El Salvador national anthem was so long. Let's listen to our national anthem here. There you have it. Pete Hegseth is meeting with the El Salvador Minister of National Defense as that country has offered to take in violent criminals from the United States and bring them down to El Salvador. But this is all happening as, again, there's been a lot of controversy over one individual who the Trump administration says they mistakenly deported to that notorious prison down in El Salvador. So these two countries, our country and El Salvador, are now talking. Something really interesting is happening in Milwaukee. There is a illegal dumping summit that's happening. They're trying to come up with ideas to deal with what has become an epidemic in Milwaukee. And we are going to take this live when we come back here on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Ooh-wee. Welcome back, news nerds. Wisconsin Live Desk here on your Wednesday. This has been a jam-packed hour. We've been everywhere from El Salvador, Washington, D.C., and Milwaukee, which is where I'm going to take you now. There's this illegal dumping seminar that's taking place. What should the city do about illegal dumping? They're trying to figure that out. Let's listen in.
Storage, that might make it a little bit more work to migrate those off of the cloud and make sure they're preserved in the city record needs. But it does get more cost effective by adding cameras under that model. But yeah, it will $200 a year per camera. It can add up quickly. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I'd like to welcome our commercial manager, Jumani Cheatham, up, who's going to talk about the waste tire management program.
They're trying to come up with ways to deal with this illegal dumping. There have been like thousands and thousands of tires dumped on the north side. Let's listen.
Thank you all for being here. Jumani Cheatham, I am the Commercial Division Manager for the Department of Neighborhood Services. And just a little context, what we are responsible for and in charge of with respect to illegal dumping is the waste tire generator tire shops. So I'm going to present to you all a synopsis of basically what the inspection program is. So we are in charge of some 120 waste tire generator shops throughout the city. What we do is their annual fire inspection and maintenance inspection, as well as their license renewal inspections. The program, it's 103 there on the list. The program is, the license is a every 2-year license. And so what we do is we go out and we do the inspection for that license. And basically we have a checklist here that we go through, and it's all code reference. both the fire code, the building code, as well as the City of Milwaukee Code of Ordinance. We go through and we check and make sure that the tire shops are in compliance with respect to their paperwork, their receipts, their tire markings, as well as any fire and building code issues that may be happening there. Tires are not only a problem with respect to illegal dumping, they're a problem at sites as well, just because they're very volatile, they're very flammable, and so we do a lot on the sites to ensure fire safety for both the buildings, the residents, as well as the people who work in these establishments. Sometimes people are not knowing that they cannot house this many tires inside of a building and or outside of the buildings, and we know that the typical tire shop sees more customers on a weekend when their transporters aren't in play, and so then they wind up with more tires than they're typically allowed to store, and then they set those outside, and you guys know the rest of the story, obviously, what tends to happen with these tires. Let me just go back to this slide. One of the things that we are doing right now is called an educational campaign. So we're going out to all of these tire shops, and we've identified some lead inspectors who will go out and help to re-educate all of the tire shop owners as to what all of the rules of engagement are. So they will be taking them informational sheets as well as some signage, as well as ensuring that we're able to see all of their waste tire transport receipts, as well as any of the other licenses and documents that they need to have, such as their recycle salvage towing license and their occupancy permit. So those are key things with respect to tire shops. One of the big things that we're going to be educating and checking up on when we're going out to these shops is labeling of the tires. Each waste tire is required by ordinance to be labeled within 5 days as a waste tire with the recycle salvage towing license number. So we'll be double checking and triple checking all of these places to ensure that they are writing that number in permanent marker on the tire so that when it does wind up somewhere else, we can trace it back to source. One of the big things that we've had challenges with is just the turnover out at the tire shops. A lot of the people that we wind up talking to on the sites, they're not the owner. They just started yesterday. Some of the nobody told them they had to do it. So what we're going to be doing is just following up with them more frequently to make sure that those tires are getting marked.
Okay, so we're following this. You've been listening to a legal dumping summit that's taking place in Milwaukee right now. This is someone from the Department of Neighborhood Services who specializes in dealing with some of the businesses that are tire shops where oftentimes those tires, they have too many of them, and some of those companies are the ones illegally dumping, so they want to make sure that's not happening, although the issue may be much bigger. We're also following what's happening right now to your 401k. Maybe not a day to look at it. Another 570 points lost on the Dow as of now. It has been down more in the last hour, so it's trying to regain a little bit, but the Dow is still down 1.4 points. We did hear from Jerome Powell in the last hour. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, has sued the Trump administration over tariffs, and he's holding a press conference. So we're following all of this here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, and we still got 5 more minutes. A lot can happen in 5 minutes, so stay with us. We'll see what's coming in live next.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Things getting wild on the Wisconsin Live Desk as we have taken live shots from all across the country and here in Milwaukee, where there is an illegal dumping summit underway. What do you do when people dump tires and their garbage all throughout the city? Even city officials say this has been an epidemic that they have not been able to slow or control. So they've holding a summit today, trying to get some ideas, gain some knowledge on what different city departments do, what is being done right now. So we're watching that. We're watching your 401k. We said it was down 1.4% before. So they're trying at the end of the day here. The Wall Street investors trying to get a little bit of your money back, still down 1.3%. Not a good day for the White House, as a court has just found Trump administration officials in contempt over what is happening with the El Salvador man from Maryland who was wrongfully deported to El Salvador, is sitting in a notorious prison there. A judge has ordered that the government facilitate to bring him back. The Trump administration and the president of El Salvador both said that's not happening. They can't do that, or they won't do that. Gavin Newsom's talking right now. And the Attorney General from California have filed a lawsuit.
Would find it
as they've sued the Trump administration over tariffs
that happen to live in the state of California as it relates to the recovery efforts in Los Angeles. And one last point: 75% of the lumber that the United States imports comes from Canada. I'll repeat that: 75% of the lumber that we import comes from
All right,
Canada.
So we're following that. We're following, again, what's happening on your, at the